and welcome. My team and I are so glad to have you join us. Developing your business either as a small or medium-sized enterprise is an exciting journey. As your business strengthens your relationship with your loyal consumers, it is important to acknowledge the significance of the Consumer Guarantees Act 1993, an important piece of New Zealand legislation for all businesses. For many retailers, manufacturers, and service providers in the community, there are some that have been plagued by long-term consequences simply because they were unaware of the legalities behind a business's operation. Venturing into the world of business, it is important for SMEs to be aware of the practices and policies outlined by the CGA. To help you understand who the CGA applies to and what it means to be a consumer, here's Amalin to tell you more.
Thank you, Nick. The Consumer Guarantees Act applies to both the average consumer and business. Specifically, CGA applies to the average consumer as the law protects from poor products that are not fit for purpose. It also applies to the business as businesses cannot evade the CGA by supplying faulty or bad quality products or services while providing consumers with safety using the CGA. A consumer refers to any person who acquires goods or services, usually developed for personal, domestic, or household use. This means that a consumer is not somebody acquiring either goods or services to resupply, manufacture, or repair in the course of trade. Back to you, Nick.
Providing guarantees to consumers is an absolute priority for businesses. These guarantees must be followed by all SMEs. Under the Act, consumers are given a series of guarantees when they are purchasing a good or service from a business, such as the guarantee that the goods acquired is of acceptable quality, with no minor defects, and an acceptable appearance. Outlined under Sections 7 to 8, the goods must be safe, durable, and reasonably fit for purpose, which the business has demonstrated and that the consumer is aware of. Other sections outline guarantees as shown. There are exceptions that the consumer does not or is unable to rely on a supplier's skill or judgment. Furthermore, in honoring the guarantees that are outlined for your consumers, they can request for a remedy, such as a repair, refund, or replacement if their goods don't meet the standard. For services, under Section 28, they have a guarantee that the service is performed with reasonable care and skill. Consumers have the right to complain if they are dissatisfied with the goods or services provided. As such, SMEs must be able to provide remedies if there is a breach of any guarantee. A consumer filing a complaint means that they have the right of redress against you and will be entitled to a remedy. The CGA protects the consumer so that the remedy can be acted upon in a reasonable amount of time. Refunds, repairs with spare parts, or a guarantee of future availability of the same goods are included. However, if the consumer had misused the goods for its intended use, they have failed to be eligible for a remedy outlined by the CGA. Where there is a defect of a substantial character, or the repairs take too long, the consumer has the right to reject the goods and claim for a refund or replacement, depending on the severity of the issue. This applies to any foreseeable indirect losses, and in addition, the CGA also extends to used and second-hand goods as well. The CGA is a powerful act that protects the consumer, so I wonder, in what circumstances is it possible to contract out of the CGA? To tell you all about it, I'd like to hand it over to Monique.
Contracting out of the Consumer Guarantees Act is a breach of the Act itself, and if false or misleading representations are made about consumers' rights, it's also a breach of the Fair Trading Act. The only exception that applies is for business-to-business transactions. Business-to-business transactions are those where all parties are in trade and the goods or services are both supplied and acquired in trade. Within this, all parties must have agreed in writing to contract out of the provisions in the Consumer Guarantees Act. It must also still be considered fair and reasonable that both parties are bound by the provisions in the agreement. This aims to prevent businesses with less knowledge or power being taken advantage of. There are no exceptions for consumer transactions, regardless of if any agreements have been made. This means that businesses are still tied to the Consumer Guarantees Act, even if consumers have signed that they take responsibility for the condition of the goods. I'll now pass you on to Josh to help you understand the practical consequences for business practices under the Consumer Guarantees Act.
The CGA is a signal to businesses that they must act in the marketplace in a fair and conscientious way. Internally, this might cause businesses to devote some resources towards reinforcing this obligation on their staff, who mostly may be the primary interface between customer and business. In the case where the previously mentioned standards are not met, consumers have self-help remedies. The customer can go straight to the supplier or manufacturer with the force of the Act behind them. When the failure can be remedied, it must be done within a reasonable time. If not, the consumer can remedy it elsewhere and recover the costs from the supplier. In the case where the failure cannot be remedied or is of a substantial nature, the customer can receive damages as a result of the defective good or service, or they can reject the product and receive a refund or cancel the service. To avoid breaching the Act, the company might institute internal quality control measures. And that wraps it up. Back to you, Nick.
We hope that you are now more familiar with these obligations towards your consumers. It is important to keep your standards high and understand the piece of legislation that is the Consumer Guarantees Act 1993 and its significance in every consumer's shopping experience. On behalf of the team, thank you for joining us.